exciting.
Okay, welcome everyone to our Zoom training. I'd like to introduce to you past International Director Roberta Perry, who believes in the power of what Toastmasters can do. For the past 3 decades, Roberta has assembled powerful teams that have built over 50 clubs from Seattle to Los Angeles and from Florida to Australia. She won the District 1 International Speech Contest in 1990 and District 52's Evaluation Contest in 2005. Roberta was awarded the Toastmasters Roy G. Graham Lifetime Achievement Award and International President's Citation for Service in 2002. She was also honored by the Point of Service Association with the Andrea Martin Volunteer of the Year Award in 2015. My name is Mark Richards, Distinguished Toastmaster, and I'd like you to welcome Distinguished Toastmaster Roberta Perry with her 4 points about how to run a successful meeting. This webinar should last about 30 minutes. If there's time, we'll ask for questions. Go ahead.
Hi, Mark, Serena, everybody else that's on Zoom tonight. I so appreciate your time. It's fabulous that you could all be on this webinar, on this call, to talk about one of my favorite subjects, and that's how to run effective meetings. I might be looking a little under the weather or a little tired this evening. I just spent 10 days in Japan. One of the reasons why I was in Japan was I was brought in by the Panasonic organization to run a meeting for them. You finished on time. That never happens here. So I was thrilled that my Toastmaster training came in handy. Over my career, I also had the opportunity to work on a contract with the State of California Library Association to come into the various libraries throughout the state and train them on how to run an effective meeting, a productive meeting. And again, I couldn't have done any of that without many years of practice of running Toastmaster meetings within our organization in Seattle, San Francisco, here in Los Angeles in District 1, District 52, District 100 founders, and in several other districts around the world. I've had the opportunity to run Toastmaster meetings. So again, I'm thrilled to be able to be here tonight to talk about my favorite subject. Before I start with the main points of the subject we're going to cover tonight, I want to give you resources that are easily available. And I love Google, so I recommend highly to Google the following statements. 1, Toastmasters leading a club meeting for the first time, or Toastmasters, how to lead a Toastmaster meeting. That will give you many articles on running an effective Toastmaster meeting. Those of you that are interested in taking your Toastmaster skills outside and transitioning to run meetings in your businesses, in your communities, then I would also recommend the following 2 sites. 1, how to run a productive meeting, or secondly, how to run an effective meeting. On both those sites, you'll have articles by the Harvard Business Review, Forbes, Entrepreneur, not Toastmasters, but New York Times. And they also reference Toastmasters in those 2 articles as well, or in those 2 sites as well. So that, to begin with, is an excellent way of just being able to gather additional information on how to run a productive meeting. I know Serena tonight, and thank you, Serena, for this opportunity, asked me to zero in on Toastmaster meetings, but as we go through that, I'm also going to reference when you're an outside meeting or a non-Toastmaster meeting, what that means for you. The goal, as all of us know, for a meeting, and it can be expanded, is to do meetings are to produce results. That's definitely the purpose. You can expand on that purpose for your particular meeting style, whether it's a Toastmaster meeting, a sales meeting, a production meeting, doesn't matter. You can expand on it, but the basic purpose is to produce results. So let's start with running a Toastmaster meeting. As all of you know, whether you're in a Toastmaster meeting or outside meeting, you are the facilitator or the host for that meeting, not the star. Again, you're the facilitator or host for the meeting and not the star. I've been in meetings, and I'm sure all of you have too, where the Toastmaster or the meeting organizer, MC, tries to be the star, and then everyone else within the organization or within the meeting take backseat to that Toastmaster or MC. That's not the purpose. You are the facilitator. Your job is to run this meeting smoothly, starting on time and ending on time. So number one, the first thing you do when you are the Toastmaster or outside meeting planner, you prepare, prepare, prepare. I know I don't need to go into that further. You all know that preparation is going to mean the difference between a successful meeting and a not very successful meeting. Number two, when you're in a Toastmaster meeting, you set the meeting theme or the agenda at least 1 week out. Everyone needs to know what the theme of the meeting is, what the purpose of the meeting is. So as Toastmasters, we can plan our presentations around that theme or the agenda that it needs to be, the agenda that's going to be discussed if you're in a business meeting. So again, you set the meeting theme, you set the agenda at least 1 meeting out. My preference in all meetings, and I mean all meetings, is a timed agenda. In Toastmasters and we did do minute by minute agendas, because when you have that, you can make adjustments easily. You know where you can make up time. But if you don't have a timed agenda, and at least a good chunk of it, you don't have a clue if you're going to be able to run this meeting on time. So every meeting I do is a timed agenda. I even did that in Japan. And again, they were surprised that I could literally start on time and end on time and adjust throughout the meeting, depending on how long the presentations were. So that's number two. Number three is to send out reminders. And I know we all do that for our meetings. You send it out a week in advance with a theme, then midway in the week towards the meeting date, send out a reminder with the theme. If in a Toastmaster meetings, you've got costumes or you have props that are going to be used, of course you want to let your members know that so they can dress the part or bring props themselves. Sometimes food is involved in these meeting themes, so it's always good. 7 days out, and then again midweek to let everybody know that what the theme is and what additional things we can do to make that meeting even more successful. Number four, when you're the Toastmaster, you always want to match the evaluator to the speaker. And again, I'm not going into a lot of detail there, but for me, I like mixing it up. Oftentimes I will match a seasoned Toastmaster with a brand new Toastmaster. But when I have a brand new Toastmaster, I always try to find an evaluator that I know is not going to beat that person up, but is going to keep a smile on their face and be complimentary and only give them maybe 1 or 2 things to work on. If they're overwhelmed with bad news, I have seen many clubs where members leave after that first speech because the evaluator beat the person up, and basically they sat there thinking, I'm the worst speaker on the planet, I'll never get better, so I'm out of here. So it's always good to put an evaluator with a brand new Toastmaster who you know will give them an excellent evaluation with 1, maybe 2 items to work on. Then number 5, I'm just looking at my notes here. Number 5, I always double check the pronunciation of all of my speakers, everyone that I need to announce during the meeting. In Japan, it was quite fun for me to learn the pronunciation of so many of the Japanese speakers, but you always do it. My preference is to get the pronunciation face to face when they arrive. That way that I can see and I can hear what it is how their name's pronounced. So I won't say I was perfect in Japan, but I was 99% in Japan. It was quite fun. Number 6, pay close attention to the time. Constantly keep a timing device with you. You want to start on time and end on time. When I worked at Fox Studios I was vice president of themed entertainment over there for about 4 years. The very first meeting I held with the consumer products team, of course, it was at 1:00 in the afternoon, and I start on time. I'm at 1:00. Somebody said, well, people won't even arrive on time. They're usually 15 or 20 minutes late. I said, you know what? I start my meetings on time. They'll get used to it. By the third meeting, they all showed up on time because they knew that I didn't repeat myself. The meeting starts at 1:00. That's when we start, and then we end, and we end on time. So I was able to train the Fox team to be able to start on time and end on time. And everybody appreciated it because we got in, we knew the goals of that particular meeting, we knew what results we needed to get out of that, and what action items that needed to come from that meeting. Actually, I'm going to go back to number 6 for just again paying close attention to time. I want to also recommend that you as a Toastmaster sit close to the lectern, as close as possible, because there's time for you to get up and out of your seat into the lectern. And if you're sitting too far back in the audience or in the rows, you take valuable seconds, and that does add up over the course of a meeting. You also want to, when you're watching time, you want to have easy access to the lectern. You never know when something or somebody at the lectern is going to need you for whatever reason. I know this is a horrid thing to say, but there have been times when speakers in several meetings that I've attended in Toastmasters did not pay attention to the red light, and they were just frozen in time, and they were stuck there at the lectern. So as I do in other meetings outside of the organization that I'm known for, and I say you have 10 minutes or you have 15 or you have 30 minutes, and they hit that mark, I let them take a breath of air, and then I say, thank you very much, and begin the applause. You can do that with a Toastmaster as well. If you've got somebody running over more than a minute, 2 minutes, depending on your club culture, the Toastmaster has the right to let them take a breath, which Toastmasters do occasionally, and then say, thank you very much. We really appreciate your presentation today, and get them off the stage. You can only do that when you're sitting close enough to the lectern so that you can get up there as needed. All right, and speaking of applause, number 7 is lead the applause. Sometimes our Toastmasters are hesitant to applaud someone. We, as the facilitator, as the host, we're the cheerleaders. We're the ones that need to lead all of the applause going forward, or just all the applause, period. Number 8, we need to remind ourselves, I know I need to do that. I always need to remind myself of not only my role as Toastmaster, but my responsibilities as Toastmaster, as well as the responsibilities for all the people that are on the program. And the reason I do that is because we may have a room, hopefully we all have a room full of guests. And if the awe counter stands up and gives a weak introduction of what the awe counter does, you can fill in that gap, or the same with the grammarian, or can fill in the gap for going forward. What is the purpose of coaching, or what is the purpose of evaluation? It's always good to know the responsibilities of every member presenting that is on your team, and that's even for outside. Know their responsibility. In Japan, I met briefly with the group that I was working with. We had 6 people. I met individually with all 6 people to make sure they understood their role, their responsibility, and the goal of their presentation. Now, 2 of them, just because of the translation between Japanese and English, had prepared something totally different. But because we met earlier in the day and they brought their assistants, we could change that so that the entire panel was smoothly run, smooth presentations, and everyone got what they needed out of it. Do the same thing in your Toastmaster meetings. If you can't meet with your evaluator, your general evaluator beforehand, meet with them, of course, that morning. I always recommend meeting with your main people during the week, your general evaluator, your table topics master, just to make sure everybody knows their particular assignments, their roles, and that they've met with their teams in place, all for the purpose of being able to produce a successful meeting at the end of it. You've produced those results. So that's number 8 on my list. Number 9 is keep your introduction of your speakers short. Now, I try to get all of my speakers when I'm the Toastmaster to send me their introductions, because oftentimes they're a page long, and then I let them know that I am going to shorten this introduction to fit the time that we have. I like to have a 1-paragraph introduction at the most, covering the following items. Number 1, an interesting opening statement about the speech that the speaker usually provides. Number 2, to try to answer briefly, why is this topic important to this audience and why this particular speaker? Maybe there's something in the speaker's background that makes him an expert or her an expert on this particular topic. If that's available to you, definitely use that in the introduction. And number 3 in the introduction is what educational program they're working from. In pathways, always give the pathway. We're trying to get people educated on the 10 different pathways. So announce the pathway, announce the level, but then go on to say what that level is and any objectives that you can glean from that level that is helpful for an audience of Toastmasters who want to write an evaluation or write a coaching note to you about what they liked and what they would recommend for changes going forward. And then number 4 in the introduction, I always end with the title and then the name. It's the old Johnny Carson routine, and he taught public speaking a few times, as I am aware of, and he always recommended that when you're introducing a speaker, introduce not at the beginning with the name, because an audience is used to applauding when the name is presented, but at the end of the introduction. So I usually start, our next speaker is, or I'll start with the opening statement. Did you know, or I'll start something a little bit better, 60% of Americans attend at least one meeting every day during a year, or something like, and these come from Harvard Business Review, 39% of your audience will doze or go and work on their cell phones doing your presentation. Something to get get the audience attention. Then I'll go, our next speaker is speaking on the topic of how to prepare an effective meeting agenda. And then why this topic is important to this audience, why this speaker, and then end with the title, Presenting How to Prepare an Effective Meeting Agenda. Please welcome past international director, Roberta Perry. And Mark did a perfect job with that. That's the Johnny Carson way. When you say the name, go higher with more volume on the person's name. That gets the audience's attention and directs it to the front where you're welcoming that speaker up there, shake their hand, and then you leave the area. Number 10, when working as the Toastmaster, I always recommend putting your paperwork in a binder. Take the binder to the lectern, not lots of papers flopping in the wind. It does not look like one is organized when that happens. It looks like if people, and you can tell people in an audience hold their breath for fear that all that paper is going to scoot off when the wind blows or when the door opens. So 3, hold your paper, put it in a binder. It looks so organized when you approach the lectern and you open up your binder and you're an organized Toastmaster or meeting moderator. Number 11, I always recommend when you are the Toastmaster and doing the opening of the theme to not spend more than 2 minutes doing the theme of what's going to be happening during the meeting, the theme information, and then any agenda changes that you might have. The reason for that is we have all sat through the Toastmaster trying to be the star, and they give a 5 to 7, 10-minute top talk about their particular theme. If it can't be, in my opinion, if it can't be presented in 2 minutes, then the Toastmaster has not thought through the theme very well. Keep it short, because again, we're not the stars, we're only the facilitator, and we can use information about the theme throughout the meeting. It doesn't all have to be up there right at the very beginning. And then when we're introducing the, we can add a few things when we introduce 1 or 2 things when we introduce the table topics master or the general evaluator, but keep the opening short. So that was number 11. Number 12, I love having a evaluator, a Toastmaster evaluator during the meeting. I like to ask somebody, and I know we used to do this with our club leadership manuals, but I do it now. And I would get handing somebody an evaluation form that says, what did I do well? What could I have done differently during this meeting? And what is the one recommendation you would make that would make this meeting even more successful? And that way I get evaluated. In the beginning, I had trouble with timing way back when I was a Toastmaster in Seattle. This evaluation helped me to really organize how to put on a Toastmaster meeting and keep it starting on time and ending on time, and how to make adjustments throughout the meeting. So I highly recommend that to all of our Toastmasters. Have a Toastmaster evaluator. It doesn't have to be one that will give a presentation during the meeting, or just have it as written. In the beginning, when we started Renaissance Speakers, we had that Toastmaster evaluator actually do a verbal evaluation. That way, everybody in the room can learn to be a better Toastmaster, and it worked more and more. However, as clubs have different timing situations, that seems to drop out, at least for me, and it happens only as a written evaluation for me, but I highly recommend it. Number 13, when you are the Toastmaster.
Roberta, we have,
yes.
Roberta, it's right now 6:23, just so you know.
Good, I'm keeping that track here as well. So
Excellent.
you're right, I probably let me just do 2 real quickly, and then I'll open for a question or 2. And then people can also send me any questions they have. Thanks, Mark. Number 13, arrive early, be able to have everything done, meet your members, greet your members, and then that way then you have one-on-one contact with them before the meeting starts. And finally, number 14, smile, have fun. And remember what Dr. Smedley always told us, we learn best in moments of enjoyment. Mark, back to you to see if there's any questions.
Okay, what I'm going to do now is I'm going to I'm going to unmute all, so all of you will have the chance to speak. If you have a question, go ahead and ask, and Roberta, you'll hear it, and we'll go from there for the next few minutes. So go ahead if you have any questions. Jesse, if you're speaking, Jesse, I can't really hear you. Try again.
And I can't hear him either, Mark.
No.
Hello?
Yeah,
Hi, Jesse.
Jesse, you're on with Roberta Perry. Do you have any questions?
Yeah, so how would you go about somebody that's kind of distracting? I don't want to go say socially awkward, but it's just at the same time, they get up while somebody's speaking and they kind of go about stuff that kind of distracts the speaker. How would you go about that situation?
That you're absolutely right. Typically, it depends. There are several ways to handle it. Number one, if you have your sergeant at arms, can go to that person and ask that person to sit down or to come outside. It is distracting to the speaker, but that is not atypical when you're in the outside world. That happens quite a bit, and typically we have somebody that can handle. Or if you just want to let it go, and then after the meeting, talk with that person and explain that distractions are difficult. The third way is to do a speech on that. Speaking distractions, speaker distractions. And as a speaker, what things in the audience distract you when you're speaking and how to, any one of those three.
All right, thank you.
You're welcome, Jesse.
Any other questions? Go ahead, user 4. Okay.
Mark, are you hearing her?
I am, no, it's whoever user 4 is, I think they just made a noise.
Okay.
Are there any more questions for Roberta before we close this webinar? Last call. Okay, well, I appreciate all 9 of you all 8 of you for joining us that are on this call. We've been listening to Roberta Perry. She has been most gracious in coming back from Japan after a 10-day work vacation, and it is right now. It is right now in her time. It is right now early in the morning, and she has not had a good night's sleep. She's done an extraordinary job, and it's really amazing. Somebody like Roberta Perry still going strong after 44 years as one of the premier Toastmasters of our time. There's not too many people that have been around as long as she has, and has been as gracious as she is to be still running webinars, keeping up with pathways, doing all the great things that she does around the world. So we are most honored, and thank you very much, Roberta, for leading this webinar on how to run effective meetings.
Thank you, Mark. Thank you, Serena. Thank you, everyone on the call. It was my pleasure.
Okay, goodbye, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.